He then lays hands on Saul, and he is filled with the Holy Spirit. But again, there are no mention of tongues here in this passage. The focus is on healing his blindness and the filling itself. And so if tongues were the initial evidence, why doesn't Luke mention it here, especially since he details it elsewhere? So what has actually happened? Well, let's look at the very next verse, Acts chapter 9, verse 18. The text says, "At once something like scales fell from his eyes, and he regained his sight. Then he got up and was baptized." And so right after, Saul regains his sight, gets baptized, and starts preaching Yeshua in the synagogues as indicated by verse 20. And so his immediate action is bold proclamation of the message, not tongues. And this mirrors other feelings where boldness or joy follows without tongues, such as in Acts chapter 4, which we pointed out earlier in this teaching. And so again, if tongues are the initial evidence of spirit filling, then why is there no specific mention of them? And I would submit for suggestion that if tongues are the initial evidence, and it really is for all believers, including Gentiles, why would you not specifically point that out when the apostle to the Gentiles was himself filled with the Spirit? Just something to consider and think about. And now to be clear, we're not saying that Paul never received the gift or never spoke in tongues, which brings me to the next point that we want to look at, and that is Paul's later gift of tongues. Now, we know from Paul's own words, his own testimony, that he did speak in tongues later in 1 Corinthians 14:18, when he said, "I thank Elohim that I speak in other languages more than all of you." And so, based on Paul's own testimony, he spoke in tongues, and he even asserts that he speaks in tongues or languages more than all of them. And now, many who believe in tongues as a private prayer language or some totally unknown heavenly or angelic tongue, they would use this verse to assert their view of a private prayer language or this heavenly angelic tongue, if you will, asserting that to be what Paul is inferring here. But let's just ask, why would Paul speak in tongues more than them all? Well, as stated in the last video, it seems more likely that Paul would speak in tongues more than them all because he is literally traveling the known world of his day, taking the gospel to the nations. And the need to be able to communicate with multicultural and multilingual groups was a necessity, which would make the gift of tongues extremely practical and beneficial for his ministry in communicating the gospel to the nations, the Gentiles, if you will. And so we must remember that the word used here for tongues is glossa, which according to Mickelson's Enhanced Strong's Dictionary of the Hebrew and Greek Testaments, this word glossa, it has three meanings here: the tongue, by implication a language, thirdly, specifically a language not naturally acquired. So Paul, he spoke in other languages as part of his missionary work to the Gentiles, likely on a daily basis. But the point is, here in Acts 9, in the moment of filling, it's absent. And so this timing, it shows tongues as a purposeful gift, not automatic proof of the Spirit's arrival. And so if it were initial evidence, it should have happened right then, but the text, it's silent. So let's begin to wrap up this teaching by looking at the implications for the initial evidence